When you stop contacting her, she notices. Confusion sets in and curiosity grows. Her ego feels the shift, and soon she begins to reflect. If she truly cares, she'll reach out. Your silence forces clarity, either drawing her back with intention or helping her let go with understanding. Silence speaks volumes. When you stop contacting a woman, one of the very first things she feels is confusion, especially if your communication was once consistent. Daily calls, sweet messages, playful check-ins. Your sudden silence doesn't go unnoticed. It's not just about the absence of your words. It's about the sudden emptiness in a space she had grown used to you occupying. It creates a shift in her mental and emotional routine. She begins to ask herself questions. Did I say something wrong? Did something happen to him? Is he upset with me? This confusion doesn't come from a place of arrogance. It stems from her trying to fill the silence with answers. She's searching for understanding in the middle of your withdrawal. This moment of confusion quickly turns into curiosity. If there were genuine feelings involved, if you had a connection she also valued, then your silence becomes more than just a lack of messages. It becomes a mystery that lingers in her mind. She might try to appear unbothered on the outside, going about her day like nothing has changed. But inside, there's a subtle shift. She starts checking her phone more often, waiting for a ping from you. She scrolls through old chats, rereading past conversations, trying to detect a sign of what went wrong. That curiosity becomes an internal conversation she has with herself, and sometimes she won't even admit it to her closest friends because pride often masks vulnerability. What's important to understand is that this curiosity is a powerful emotional response. Women, just like men, become attached to emotional rhythms. When that rhythm is disrupted, it throws things off balance. It's in that imbalance that curiosity brews. Even if she doesn't have strong romantic feelings for you, your sudden disappearance challenges a part of her that's used to feeling noticed, pursued, or important. Your silence whispers louder than your words ever did. And that's what stirs her interest even more. She starts to monitor quietly. She might look at your social media updates. She may even notice your absence from group chats or mutual circles. She becomes an observer, trying to decode you without making a move. It's subtle, but powerful. Your silence has her attention now, in a way your presence may not have fully achieved. And that's the irony. Sometimes a woman feels your value more in your absence than she did when you were available all the time. In many cases, this phase determines what happens next. Her confusion and curiosity will either evolve into deeper reflection or eventually fade into detachment. But in that initial phase, when you stop contacting her, know that you're not being ignored. You've stirred something. You've interrupted her pattern. And now, whether she admits it or not, you're living rent-free in her mind, if only for a while. When you stop contacting a woman, something unexpected often happens beneath the surface. Her ego gets challenged. This isn't always about vanity or arrogance. It's about how we, as humans, respond to emotional validation and the absence of it. For a woman who is used to receiving attention, affection, or consistent communication from you, your silence strikes a nerve. It disturbs a balance she didn't realize she relied on. Suddenly, what once seemed predictable is now missing. And that gap? It challenges how she sees herself in the relationship dynamic. Many women are conditioned to be desired, pursued, and admired. It becomes part of how they measure their desirability or influence in a man's life. When that dynamic shifts, when the texts stop coming, when the compliments fade, when your name disappears from her notifications, it can stir up a quiet storm within her. Not because she's necessarily in love or deeply emotionally invested, but because her sense of being wanted has been disturbed. She starts to wonder, why isn't he chasing me anymore? What changed? And more importantly, what does that say about me? This moment can be emotionally complex. On the outside, she might project indifference. She'll act unbothered, post a selfie, or keep herself busy. But internally, her ego is being forced to reckon with something it wasn't prepared for, not being the center of your attention anymore. It's a subtle form of disempowerment, one that can feel uncomfortable, even frustrating, especially if she believed she had the upper hand. Your absence flips the script. It introduces uncertainty into a space she thought she controlled. She may begin to replay past conversations, questioning if she missed a signal, overlooked a shift in tone, or failed to reciprocate something you needed. She might start comparing herself to other women, wondering if you've moved on to someone new. These thoughts don't come from weakness. They come from a bruised ego trying to make sense of your silence. She wants to understand how the man who once gave her consistent attention is now perfectly fine without her. And here's where the transformation begins. Her ego, now unsettled, may drive her to take action. She might reach out subtly, liking an old post, replying to a story, or even sending a casual message. These are not always expressions of vulnerability. Sometimes they're attempts to regain control, to see if she still holds space in your world. It's her way of restoring balance, not just emotionally, but egotistically. She wants to know she still matters. Your silence, intentional or not, becomes a mirror for her ego. It forces her to evaluate how much of her self-worth was tied to your attention. And in that process, she grows, either by confronting her own need for external validation or by realizing the true depth of her feelings. But make no mistake, your absence didn't go unnoticed. It echoed in the chambers of her pride, asking her a question she didn't expect to answer. After the confusion fades and her ego begins to stir, something more subtle begins to unfold. She watches silently. She may not call, text, or make any obvious moves, but she's paying attention, closely, carefully, quietly. It's easy to think she's moved on, that your silence has been met with indifference. But don't be fooled. Women often process emotions differently. Rather than react impulsively, many observe, study, and reflect before making a move. Her silence is not always distance. Sometimes it's strategy, sometimes it's self-protection, but most of the time, it's curiosity dressed in quiet observation. She might scroll through your social media, checking your posts, stories, even who you've been interacting with. She notices the changes. If you were once posting about her or sharing your thoughts regularly and suddenly go silent or shift focus, she picks up on that. If you post something that seems vague or emotionally suggestive, she'll analyze it, wondering if it's about her. She notices the energy, even when it's unspoken. Even when you think you're being neutral or subtle, she's decoding the message behind the message, and she does it in silence. If you share mutual friends, she might casually ask how you've been, or listen intently when your name comes up. Not in a desperate way, but in that calm, composed manner that allows her to gather information without giving anything away. She's not always looking for a reason to return. Sometimes she just wants to understand what shifted. She's watching to see how you're moving without her, what changes you're making, and whether your silence is a temporary emotion or a conscious decision. And all of this happens without you even knowing. Her silence is not a lack of care. It's a calculated pause. Many women are taught not to chase, not to show vulnerability first. So instead of reaching out, she steps back and watches. She wants to see if the silence will echo back to her, or if it will settle into something permanent. She pays attention to your patterns, to your energy, to the subtle shifts in your behavior that most wouldn't notice. She's watching not just to see you, but to see who you are without her. This quiet observation is often where the emotional shift begins. It allows her to reflect not only on your actions, but also on her own feelings. Does she miss you? Does she feel relieved? Is your silence a wake-up call or a confirmation? Her watching isn't passive. It's investigative. It's her way of processing the situation without putting herself out there too soon. She wants to see if you meant the things you said, if your actions match your silence, and if the man you are now still aligns with the connection you once shared. So while you think nothing is happening, while you assume she's gone cold, know this: she's paying attention. Maybe not with her words, but with her eyes, her mind, and her intuition. And in that silence, she's learning everything she needs to know. When you stop contacting her and the days turn into weeks, something interesting starts to happen. She begins to romanticize the past. At first, the silence was confusing. Then it challenged her ego. But as time moves on and the emotional distance grows, her mind naturally starts reaching back, revisiting moments you shared. And what's even more fascinating, the mind doesn't always remember things exactly as they were. It remembers them with emotion, with color, with softness. The bad moments begin to blur, and the good ones shine more brightly. She starts thinking about the jokes that made her laugh unexpectedly, the small compliments you gave without even realizing, the thoughtful gestures that may have once felt routine but now feel golden in hindsight, the way you looked at her when she wasn't paying attention, the way you spoke when you were passionate about something. Even the way you said her name might echo in her mind when she least expects it. These moments replay not just in memory, but in feeling. And the longer your silence stretches, the more she fills that gap with her idealized version of who you were. This isn't about delusion, it's about human nature. When we lose connection, we naturally reach back to reclaim the emotional comfort we once had. She may start comparing others to you, not just in what you did, but in how you made her feel. Even if your relationship wasn't perfect, even if things ended in silence or confusion, the highlights begin to take center stage. She forgets the flaws for a moment. She remembers the warmth. She might talk to her friends about you again, not out of desperation, but out of curiosity. "Do you remember when he used to do that thing?" she might say, laughing to herself. The little things suddenly matter more. The way you texted her first thing in the morning, or how you remembered something she mentioned only once. In your absence, these things grow in emotional weight. They become reminders of the connection that once existed. Romanticizing the past is also her way of processing the unknown. She may never get closure or a proper goodbye, so her mind fills in the emotional blanks. It creates a version of you and your story that comforts her in a quiet way. It allows her to feel connected to something meaningful, even if it's no longer real in the present. What's important to know is that this reflection is not always a sign she wants to come back. Sometimes it's simply her way of healing, of honoring the emotional footprint you left behind. But other times, this romanticized memory becomes the reason she does reach out, because in her heart, the version of you she now carries feels more valuable, more missed, and more emotionally alive than she expected, and it all started with your silence. When a woman truly cares, silence doesn't sit well with her for too long. She may hold back initially, giving you space, respecting the distance, or even trying to protect her pride. But if the connection mattered to her, if there was depth, vulnerability, or real emotional investment, then at some point, that caring will push through the silence. She'll reach out. It may not be dramatic or direct. Often, it starts small. A simple, "Hey," a comment on something you posted, a question that doesn't really need an answer, but serves as a bridge. Her message might look casual on the surface, but underneath it, there's intent. It's her way of saying, "I've been thinking about you," without having to expose herself entirely. When you were consistently communicating, it gave her a sense of emotional rhythm. Your presence brought comfort, validation, and perhaps a sense of security. When that presence disappears, it can feel like an emotional imbalance. If she doesn't care, she'll quickly adapt to the new normal. But if she does, the silence starts to feel loud. That absence begins to tug at her thoughts, and slowly, her need for emotional clarity or connection outweighs her desire to play it cool. This doesn't mean she'll send a heartfelt paragraph or confess her feelings out of nowhere. Women are intuitive and often cautious with their emotional vulnerability. Her reaching out might be masked in lightheartedness, but it's meaningful. It takes courage, especially in a world where we're constantly told to wait, not chase, not be the first to blink. But when a woman cares deeply, pride often takes a back seat to clarity. She'd rather know where things stand than sit in endless guessing games. Sometimes her message will come at a moment that feels random to you, but it's not random to her. She's been thinking about it, debating with herself, wondering how you'll respond. Reaching out is her way of testing the emotional waters, to see if the door is still open, if the bond still exists, and if you even noticed her absence the way she noticed yours. However, it's also important to recognize that reaching out doesn't always mean she wants to resume the relationship or rekindle the connection. Sometimes it's just closure she's seeking, or reassurance, or even peace of mind that she wasn't the only one who felt something real. But the bottom line is, if she genuinely cared, the silence won't be enough to keep her away forever. She'll need to say something, do something, even if it's subtle. So if she sends that message, no matter how light or casual, know that it likely took more emotional strength than you realize. It's a quiet sign of emotional investment, a soft, brave step toward truth in a world where everyone is pretending not to feel. Because when a woman truly cares, the silence may pause her, but it rarely stops her. She'll reach out, one way or another. When a woman feels your absence, especially after you've stopped contacting her, and she's not quite ready to reach out directly, she may choose a different route. She'll try to get your attention. This is a subtle but powerful stage in the emotional process. It's not necessarily about being dramatic or manipulative. It's about creating an opening, an opportunity for you to notice her again without her having to say it out loud. For many women, especially those who still care but are holding back for reasons like pride, fear of rejection, or uncertainty, the next best thing to reaching out directly is getting you to do it. She might start posting more actively on social media, maybe a picture with a caption that sounds a little too pointed, maybe a story with a song that carries emotional weight. She might share memories, quotes, or moments that indirectly reflect how she's feeling, nostalgic, empowered, or even distant. These aren't random. They're calculated nudges, little breadcrumbs she hopes you'll pick up on. She's saying, "Look at me, I'm still here," without having to message you first. She knows you might be watching just like she was, and now she's giving you something to see. Sometimes it goes beyond just online presence. She may start showing up more where she knows you might notice her, engaging with your friends' posts, reacting to your stories, or even appearing in places you used to visit together. These are soft signals meant to remind you of her presence without the vulnerability of direct communication. She wants to be in your mind again, the way you're still in hers. It's not always intentional either. Sometimes it's an unconscious reaction. A woman who's feeling your absence and not ready to fully move on might naturally try to reassert her presence in your world. She might start looking her best more often, putting extra effort into her appearance, not just for herself, but because, somewhere deep down, she hopes it gets back to you. Even if you're not speaking, part of her wants to know that you still see her, still notice her, still care, if only a little. And here's the key. These attention-seeking behaviors don't come from weakness. They come from emotional conflict. She wants to be strong and detached, but a part of her still wants to be remembered, still wants to matter. Her silence doesn't mean indifference. It often means she's navigating how to hold her pride and her feelings in the same hand. So, instead of texting you, she leaves signs, visible ones, audible ones, even energetic ones. The goal isn't always to get back together. Sometimes it's just to know she still has some kind of influence, that the bond you shared hasn't completely disappeared. So while she may not say it directly, her actions, her posts, her sudden glow-up, her digital breadcrumbs, they're all whispers of the same thought. I wonder if he still thinks about me. As the silence stretches on and the emotional dust begins to settle, a woman who once thrived on your presence starts to turn inward. She begins to evaluate her feelings, not just about you, but about the entire experience. In the absence of communication, there is space. Space to think, to breathe, and most importantly, to feel without interference. It's in this quiet that she begins asking herself the harder questions. What did this connection really mean to me? Was I in it for the right reasons? Did I miss him, or just the idea of him? This evaluation isn't always instant. It unfolds gradually, often while she's doing everyday things, driving, cooking, lying awake at night. Your silence triggers a deeper emotional response that forces her to reflect. She starts to separate the moments that were truly meaningful from the ones that were just habitual. She may revisit memories, not just to romanticize them this time, but to understand their weight. She'll ask herself whether the affection she felt was genuine connection or a temporary escape. And through this reflection, she gains clarity, slowly but surely. During this time, she also evaluates her own role. She thinks about how she showed up, how she responded to your energy, and whether she gave enough or perhaps too much. Did she hold back when she should have leaned in? Did she give too much to someone who wasn't ready to receive it? These reflections are critical because they aren't just about you anymore. They're about her growth, her self-awareness, and her emotional boundaries. If the connection was strong and rooted in something real, her feelings often deepen in this phase. Because when the noise fades, what remains is truth. And if she still feels you in her thoughts, in her heart, in her quietest moments, that tells her something. It tells her that her feelings weren't just reactive, they were rooted. But if, on the other hand, the silence feels more like relief than regret, she also gains valuable clarity. She may come to realize that what she thought was love was actually attachment, or that the relationship served a purpose that has now run its course. This internal assessment may make her want to reach out, or not. But what it definitely does is give her a new sense of emotional direction. She understands herself better. She becomes more grounded in her truth. She sees where she may have settled, compromised, or ignored her own needs, and that awareness becomes her guide moving forward. So while it might appear from the outside that she's simply moved on or gone quiet, what's really happening inside is a powerful emotional audit, a rebalancing. Your silence didn't just make her miss you or question you, it made her look inward and get honest about what she truly feels and needs. And in that process, she's not just deciding about you, she's deciding about herself. After the silence, the reflection, and the emotional tug-of-war, she eventually reaches a point of clarity. This is the moment where things become black and white for her. The confusion fades. The romanticizing of the past loses its pull. The need to get your attention quiets down. Instead, she stands at a fork in the road, not with uncertainty, but with understanding. And from this place of emotional truth, she either comes back into your life or walks away for good. If she chooses to return, it's not out of desperation or emotional impulse. It's because after evaluating everything, her feelings, the dynamic you shared, the silence you created, she's realized that there's something still worth exploring, something real. Her return is intentional. She's done the emotional work. She knows why she's coming back, and she's coming back not to fill a void, but to reconnect with something that held meaning. This version of her is clearer, more self-aware, and no longer driven by ego or fear. If she reaches out, it may seem simple, a message, a call, a gesture, but the decision behind it is layered and thoughtful. She's coming from a place of strength, not uncertainty. On the other hand, if she chooses to move on, it's with a similar sense of peace. The silence gave her the emotional distance needed to see things for what they really were. She's no longer hanging on to the hope that you'll reach out or that things will return to how they once were. She's no longer looking at the past through a romantic lens. Instead, she sees the relationship in its entirety, the good, the bad, and the lessons in between. And from that awareness, she makes the decision to close the chapter and redirect her energy elsewhere. This doesn't mean she stopped caring. Moving on doesn't always come from a lack of love. Sometimes it comes from realizing that love isn't enough if it's not mutual, respected, or growing. She chooses herself, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. Her silence now becomes her boundary, not her uncertainty. Whether she returns or moves on, the key factor is clarity. That's what your silence gave her. It created the emotional space to detach, observe, feel, and decide. And while you may not always get to witness the process she went through, know that it changed her. She's not the same woman who once waited for your text or wondered what she meant to you. She's either made peace with walking away, or she's stepping back into your world with purpose and maturity. Either way, the ambiguity is gone. She knows what she wants, how she feels, and what she deserves. And now, her next move, whether it's toward you or toward a new beginning, is grounded in something far more powerful than emotion alone. It's grounded in clarity. In the end, when a woman is faced with your silence, it sets off a deeply emotional journey, one filled with confusion, reflection, and quiet observation. She may not react right away, but she feels the shift. Her ego gets stirred, her heart begins to question, and her mind starts remembering. She might try to get your attention or test the waters with subtle signs, but behind every action is a desire for understanding and emotional truth. Through this silence, she's not just figuring you out, she's discovering herself. She's confronting what she truly wants, what she can live without, and whether the connection you once shared still holds meaning in her life. And when she finally reaches that moment of clarity, whether she chooses to return or let go, it won't be out of confusion or emotion. It will be out of certainty. Your silence, though difficult, became the mirror she needed to see herself more clearly. And in that clarity, she finds her answer.